Hi everyone, welcome back again to the last video of the life lessons with Camilla. Today we're going to focus on our last 10 lessons for now on this specific topic. However, if this is something that we all that you like and you're interested in learning more, I'm happy to record more videos in the future. But for now, I wanted to go over the next video, which is going to focus on first gen lessons and about culture. We're going to talk about independence, healing, and identity, right? So we're going to go dive very deep into that. And please, again, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to share your own experience and what you have learned yourself, especially if you're um, first generation, and if you're an immigrant, right? If you've gone through the different cultures and blending those together and figuring out how you find yourself in the different spaces that you're part of, please feel free to share more about that. So, without further ado, let's start with lesson number one. I learned how to belong in two cultures without fully fitting into either. So that's my lesson one. So I'll go a little bit and tell you about my story. And yeah, I'm getting a little nervous, right? I think it's just because looking back and just reflecting on how much I've learned and how much I've grown since I moved here to the United States. So yeah, so I'm Albanian. I was born in Albania. I lived in this beautiful city called Korch. If we have any Albanians here, feel free to tell me where you're from. But yes, I grew up there, and I moved when I was 13. We moved to Massachusetts, and I've been living in America ever since. With a small exception of when I lived in Spain. I studied abroad as a college student, and that was beautiful. I had a great time, but I definitely felt, when I moved here, I felt that I was definitely belonging in two cultures, right? So one culture, my family, I go home, speak fully Albanian, then, at school, fully English, so I was kind of figuring out these two spaces and who I would show up as. So yeah, so my parents, they definitely made sure that I would stick to my Albanian culture and make sure that I don't forget my traditions and so on. And I didn't. I mean, I grew up there, so I speak it fully. I can read it. I can write it. I dominate the language very well. However, it was definitely difficult to be able to go into these different spaces. My parents, they didn't really understand the American culture and what exactly students do here. So I'm sort of like a blend of these two cultures, and I'm sure you all can relate. So you go home and my mom's like living life one way, and for example, I'll just give an example. In college, I was part of these different groups, and I remember I created this huge event with some other co-chairs of the campus activities board, and I told my mom, oh, I'm going to present and it's going to be so great. And my mom's like, yeah, I have work to do, like I have to do my laundry, I have. So right, so I think that there was like a disconnect between what's important, because back home, like, we didn't have, I mean, at least like we didn't have as much of these activities that we do here in America. So to my mom was like, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your time? You should just be studying and focusing on your schoolwork and not be doing all this extra social stuff, right? So that was a huge disconnect, and there's many more, but that's one that I wanted to kind of focus on. Number two, being first gen means figuring life out without instructions. And how many of us here, right? We've had to figure out, especially for me, it was like when I was figuring out where to go to college, I was part of this group which was called Dynamy, which was an after school program, and I loved it. I learned a lot in that program. Especially like, at that time I'd been in America maybe like 2 years or a year and a half. I still didn't know half of the stuff. I did not really understand, the application, how to apply, who to go to. I had a school counselor, but I think his load was like 200 plus students. So that definitely, it was difficult, right? I remember going to the office and just like, I think I met with my counselor like one time, but because of this program, I was able to work on my applications, send those out, and then of course be able to also, we visited a bunch of schools around Massachusetts, and yeah, so that was a learning experience. And yeah, I mean, oftentimes I remember feeling very confused or just like not knowing what I didn't know. Like, when you don't know what you don't know. I felt like that a lot. And yeah, I mean, looking back, it's like I'm I want to give myself a pat on the back, and I want all of you to give yourselves a pat on the back, because it is not easy to go to new country without learning the language and being able to navigate it as well as we all have. And I know we've all done great here, so definitely give yourself a pat on the back. And sometimes that can even mean, if you were born here and your parents were from another culture, like that's still very hard. You don't like your parents. They're doing the best they can. They're also learning English and they're learning the culture themselves. So I think that, I think it's important to also give them grace, and that's something I've learned over the years, because I used to judge them a lot of bit back in the day. But it's like if we keep judging, everybody could be better, everybody could be perfect, or in whatever way we think they should be perfect. But I think that giving people grace is can go a long, long way, and especially our parents, right? So yeah, that's number two. Number three, I learned that survival skills later became leadership skills. So, right, like for example, translating, like I go home and my dad would be like, "Can you translate these documents?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what to say. I'm not sure what this means." Just because I've gone, like I was in school, right? Like my first year here, I was in English as a second language. And I'm like, yeah, we're now learning this type of language that you're looking for me to know. And I mean, even students that, were my age, that were born here, they didn't know, they never dealt with that type of, financial letters or documents from the government, things that we needed to do. And I remember I would just look at my sister like, "Can you please help?" And she knew more than I did, and so she was very helpful. However, I yeah, so but the reason why also I wanted to go over the fact that I so back home I was taking languages, right? So when you go to school there, you can take like English or French, so it was one or the other. And I think it's a sort of like like you don't pick it, it's like whatever, depending on the section of the class you're in. So mine was French, so I was taking French. So by the time, before we came here, I had been taking English as a another language, like on the side, once a week, for about a year. So I just knew like how to say, the basic stuff: cat, dog, my mom is, like my mom is tall, my dad is tall, like things like that. So I didn't really know, and to be able to translate the official documents. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So but again, looking back, those survival skills, right? Like being in the unknown, or just like the anxiety, like learning how to deal with it, has helped me so much in my future. So especially like going to college, now I'm able to, especially in interviews as well, to showcase what my skills are. And also, I am very calm under pressure, right? And I think that's because of what I've gone through. And so my dad was speaking Albanian, saying one thing, and then I'm over here trying to translate, and I'm like, he's yelling or saying something, and I'm over here like, I can't listen to you and also pay attention to this guy or this person that I'm dealing with. And so just being like, okay, I get it. Let's calm down, right? So like being able to regulate emotions of other people, that has been huge. Like now I use that in my job, right? To be able to, like if we're going through something or a huge change of my job, I'm able to be like, okay, let's take a deep breath. Things will work out. Everything will work out, right? Number four, Albanian culture, and I'll speak specifically for my culture, values strength, but rarely teaches emotional safety. So, with the years, I've been able to learn more that we are amazing people, right? Like overall, I mean, not every single person, but like, our culture teaches amazing lessons. However, when it comes to being emotional or being like highly sensitive, as a person that I was when I was young, that sort of seemed like a weakness. Like you should not be feeling so much, or you should not be like this sensitive, because people are going to take advantage of you. So that's something that I've had to learn, and I've also had to, how do I say, like go into spaces that I can let my emotions show, right? Instead of keeping everything to myself, right? Because I think that's very unhealthy. So I think finding those spaces, whether it's like, you find like a good therapist, or you have trusted friends, or people that really understand you, I think that has really been deeply life changing for me. But yeah, looking back, it's like, yeah, I can see why a lot of people that have gone through whether it's like trauma, and they don't have anyone to turn because everyone's like, don't say anything, or let's keep it to our family, don't say it to other people. But let's say your family is the one causing those issues, like how are you going to be able to talk about it, right? Like you need to go somewhere and to a trusted source, whether it's like your friend or but sometimes your friend may not have the tools to help you. And I think that ending that stigma, right? Whether it's like therapy or whether it's like going to sources that can help us. I think that's huge. And I think here, especially here, it's different. But in the community, I mean, the Albanian community, you can still find a lot of stigma related to like whether it's like therapy or seeking, help, outside help. Because they're like, why can't you deal with it? Why you got to be so emotional? And it's like, well, because our emotions are all different, and some of us are more sensitive, and we read the room easier, and we also maybe can sense that someone is having some trouble, and we want to be helpful. And I think that can lead to emotional burnout. So learning how to navigate that has been helpful for me. A long lesson. Number 4. Number 5, being a good daughter often meant being quiet, to be quiet, right? Like looking back, I definitely I I mean, I have definitely changed so much. And now even me, like, having this YouTube channel and talking about what I've learned and how I've grown, that alone, I mean, I haven't told my parents yet, but that alone could be like, well, you were sharing too much, or you should be keeping this to yourself. And of course, I mean, my parents have gone through communism in the past, so that was a period where you keep a lot to yourself, you're not really sharing. Sharing could be scary because someone could take those words and go to like an official of the city and say like, hey, this person said this about you, and they could get in trouble. So I think that has been embedded in the culture of you just kind of keep everything to yourself. But I think that being quiet is not going to help anyone. So I think that speaking up and saying what you need and what's important to you and what you want from people can be life changing. So that's something that I've had to learn over the years. I wasn't like this. I was really, really shy, especially when I came here. I was shy also because I did not really understand a lot of the language, So that's another set of trauma. And I think that, slowly finding those sources, finding the people that help me kind of bring out who I really am, that has been huge. Number 6, breaking cycles often makes you the uncomfortable one. And how many of us feel that, we've broken cycles, as in we have, maybe we moved out, or maybe we did, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but maybe we did something that is not seen as, like for example, like being a good daughter means being quiet, like things like that, something that we like, a stigma that we've said, no, I don't subscribe to that, I don't subscribe to this. And that can be very scary, right? That can be scary for the family. And then of course, what are other people going to say, and what are they going to think about you acting the way you do? Or even as a woman, right? Like for example, in my culture, as a woman living on my own, right, which I have in the past, that alone has been, like people will have things to say about it, like, oh, why are they living alone? Or, and now it's changed a lot more, but I will say that you still get those, like you still get that sense of like a good woman lives with her family, and then they marry, and they live with their husbands, whatever. Like not everybody wants to marry, not everybody wants to follow the traditional route, or whatever that means, right? So I think that sticking to our own boundaries and breaking the cycle in whatever way that is for us can be life changing overall. Number 7, independence feels rebellious when no one has modeled it. Right. So for me, whether it's like when I was in college, I remember, I'll tell the story. My junior year of college, I told my parents, I'm like, I'm going abroad. I'm applying to go to Spain, and I can't wait to get this and that. And they were like, why would you do that? You can just stay here, and you can use the money to buy a car and work and save. Like, why do you want to go all the way to another country? We're scared for you. And when I went to Spain, actually, I'll also tell the story. My first family that they had paired me up with, that family was going through a lot of like financial issues at that moment, which you would think, right, that they would make sure to check these families and who they're bringing the kids to. Turns out the guy that was, like the counselor sort of that put us in different families, he was cousins with the dad of the family I lived in, my host family. So I ended up being like, this is not working for me, right? So again, speaking up. So within a week and a half, then I got paired up with an amazing family, which I love so much, and I still keep in touch to this day. But that was something that I showed independence, right? And so I remember telling my parents about it, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is so scary." What did they do something to you? What are you gonna do? And I'm like, "What are they gonna do to me?" And even if they do, I'll call the police, like and which they didn't. My family, the first one that I left. However, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear, and that could come, from their own experience with immigrating to a new country, and just like, and also then at that point I was in another country and they don't have access to me, or they can easily come and check on me. So that's something that I modeled that independence, and again now I'm able to help other. And I was able to help other students. When I came back, I said, if a family is acting weird, or if they're going through some financial issues and they have a lot of fights, or they make you feel uncomfortable, you're spending money. So you should say something. You want to be able to have a good experience. So, yeah. Number eight, moving out is more about peace and it's not about rejection, right? So, for a lot of women, I'll focus on the women here. Moving out of your parents' home, I'm sure that there's a lot of feelings there. Could be that, oh, your mom doesn't want you to move out because, she's comfortable having you around, whether you help with the house chores or whatever. I know a lot of the times in Albanian culture, especially when we have a lot of guests, we are huge, like in hosting. We want to make sure everything is perfect, and I know sometimes that can even be valued over like a child having to work on their homework, right? So it's like, no, 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 but first the guests, and then your homework can wait. Like, you can stay up late and then finish your homework, and I think that can be very detrimental to the children, and especially even when they're older, right? Because we feel sort of like we have to help, or we have to be here, be a good daughter, right? Going back to that term that I talked about earlier. But yeah, moving out is about peace. It's about you choosing yourself. You're not necessarily rejecting your parents, but you are choosing what's important to you and what helps you in this new chapter of your life. So that's huge. Number nine, financial independence equals emotional freedom. And I've definitely noticed that since I moved out. Like, I moved out when I was 18. I went to college. Then I continued my journey to get my master's. And I was, kind of gone for about 6 years. And then I moved back for a few years just because COVID happened and so on. But, being able to be away and to notice, wait, that's emotional freedom for me, right? And that's not to say that, they're not great people. My parents, they try to help as much as they can. However, it was important for me to get to know myself, like what's important to me, what do I like, being able to have that emotional freedom of, what do I even, what makes me happy, what hobbies do I enjoy, right? So again, being able to just kind of be in that peace and that space to then figure out what drives me, right? And so, yeah, and that a lot of it comes from financial independence, being able to, make more money, get new jobs. And this is why I'll always say, education can be the path to open up many doors. For some other people, could be different types of jobs, but however, working hard is always going to, well, hard and smart, right? Because I can understand how that can bring up some feelings, but definitely, yeah, working diligently, I'll say, and then in the goals that make sense for you, that can open up a lot of doors. So number 10, our last one of the day, I can love my culture without following and living by all of its rules. Now that's something that I've definitely have had to learn over the years and be okay with, right? I don't have to subscribe, to everything in my culture. I can subscribe to things that make sense and things that don't make sense, or things that are too redundant, or they don't align with my goals for my life. I don't have to subscribe to those. And I think it's so easy to say, like, well, of course we can all do it, right? But in the actual doing of it, it can bring up a lot of feelings of feeling less than, or feeling like you're not respecting your parents, or you're not respecting certain bringing what you were taught. And it's okay to say no, right? It's okay to push back. It's okay to say, look, I love you, but I love me and what I need to do in this life more. And that doesn't mean I reject my parents. It doesn't mean I'm not loving, what I was taught. I can appreciate it. I will take what's important to me and I'll leave the rest, like what doesn't align with me. So yeah, so that's something that I've definitely had to learned the hard way. So yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed some of these lessons, or if if you related to some of them, please feel free to comment, and I would love to hear more from you. Thank you again for being here, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.